Welcome, coffee enthusiasts, to Brewing for Equity, the podcast brought to you by the Coffee Coalition for Racial Equity. Join us as we embark on a flavorful journey through the world of coffee, exploring every nuance and perspective through the eyes of Black people in the industry. This podcast is a space dedicated to amplifying the voices and experiences of those who contribute to the rich tapestry of the coffee world. We are committed to building a racially diverse and equitable coffee industry. So let's brew conversations, share ideas, and foster a community centered around the love of coffee. I'm Georgina Jarrett and joined by co-hosts Phyllis Johnson and Dr. Tiffany Johnson. Welcome to Brewing for Equity. So super excited for the CCRE's Coffee Coalition of Racial Equity's very, very first podcast. Really excited. And co-hosting with me, Georgina Jarrett, the Education Chair of the CCRE, is...
Hi, I'm Tiffany Johnson, and I am on the Education Committee for CCRE and an Associate Professor of Organizational Behavior at Georgia Tech.
And I'm Phyllis Johnson, the founder of the CCRE and co-founder of BD Imports. And I am so thrilled to be in this conversation this morning and to kick off our first podcast. There's a lot to talk about in coffee. And I'm so happy that CCRE is creating a space to have good conversations, thoughtful conversations. And who could I ask to be in a thoughtful conversation with initially than the two of you, Tiffany and Georgina. So I'm excited. I'm excited to ask you questions and I'm excited to answer your questions.
Yeah, perfect. So how would we like to kick off? Go for the first question?
Yeah.
Well, I personally would like to, just for those who may not be familiar with the CCRE, the Coffee Coalition of Racial Equity, and the person behind CCRE, I'd love to kick off with you, Phyllis, just to, tell us who you are. Who is Phyllis Johnson? Tell us a little bit about yourself. We'll start off with that.
Yeah, that's a great question. When I think about who I am, I'm always thinking that I'm trying to find that out, actually. I think that's kind of what we're all doing. But I think when I think of the core of who I am, I'm someone who was born into, a complex situation by a single mom in the South. And I think that who I really am is someone who is trying to tell the world that I'm bigger, I'm more capable than you think I am. Mm-hmm. And I think that's who I am. That unfortunately, there's a whole lot of energy put into that. But yeah, I think that's who I am.
That's wonderful. And of course, that energy and that person, the person who you are, went on to found the CCRE. So could you tell us a little bit about the CCRE, share maybe some of the inspiration behind your social impact organization and its mission?
Yeah. The Coffee Coalition for Racial Equity was born in 2020, right after writing the open letter. And it was the strangest thing when I look back on that time, Tiffany and Georgina, it was like I wasn't really in charge of my mind and body. I had a lot of thoughts about what was going on. And I realized that I needed to act. And it was almost like I didn't want to act. Have you ever had these like out of body experiences where something is pushing you to do something, but you're like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to. I know I have a lot to say, and I'm just going to write it on this pad. And then I'm going to call up some of my friends and I'm going to present this open letter, right? And, you know, the way it looks now, as you look back on it, it looks like a very well organized, thought out process. But that's not how my life is. My life kind of feels like I'm carrying something way too heavy and I'm stumbling and I'm falling along the way. And then I'm like, oh, okay, what is that what I'm supposed to be doing? And then I figure that out and I keep walking. And I kind of knew when I wrote this letter invited people to join into some work. And I wasn't even sure as to what that work was. And even did I want to lead that work and what prepared me to lead that work. And it was something deep, deep within me had those answers, but I did not. It was very foggy to me. But what was clear to me was for 2 decades, being one of the only Black women in certain spaces working in coffee, I knew that something needed to change. I knew it had to change. Whatever we thought individually or collectively within the industry as to why that absence was there was beyond our own thoughts. And we need to figure out what caused that and how do we fix it. I had a lot of, you know, I remember going into certain boardrooms thinking, what would Martin Luther King say about this? And just really having a sense of clarity about the work that was needed. And so, yeah, we've been around this is going to be our 4th year. And I love it. I love the work. I love the mission of bringing more awareness and opportunities for Black and Brown people in coffee.
For sure.
So it sounds like it's been a pretty positive response, you would say, to the letter?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I've been humbled by it. Like, how can you write a letter? You know, I was walking in my office this morning. I keep the letter framed it sits on the floor. You really can't see it. And I thought how powerful words can be that starts in I said your head, but actually it's your heart. And how powerful that is. Can move a nation, can move an industry.
Resonated with a lot of people. What type of people reached out to you as a result of the open letter?
Well, I think the two of you did, right?
It took me a couple years, but yeah.
Dr. Tiffany a little bit later, but that's I love the latecomers. I love the later comers. I do. All sorts of great, and I got a chance to meet people all over the world. And they shared great stories that, you know, I never would have known. And so it really was about connecting people. What's funny is that there was a coffee buyer from the US. He said to me, he said, you know, I've traveled throughout Latin America, and I've oftentimes wondered why there's racial inequity. There's certain people of a different race doing one job in another group. And I wondered that, you know, in going to coffee conferences, why do we not see diversity? And it was like it was in our minds. It just needed to come out in some format, right? Someone needed to say it, and then we could do something about it.
Yeah. It's great the fact I think what I find so fantastic about the CCRE is the fact that it has pulled in so many different people from all various backgrounds, cultures, races. We have such a truly diverse and inclusive mix of folk within the organization, and that's awesome. I've learned so much from all these individuals. It's fantastic.
Yeah. You know, I think you learn a lot about yourself too. That's so much fun. And you know, you guys are incredible individuals yourselves. You know, I'm just getting a chance to meet you and to learn about your own journey and your aspirations. And I'd like to ask you a question, Georgina, because you know, when you reached out to me as a Black coffee professional working in the UK, You know, I was so excited to get to meet you. Um,
Oh.
because meeting you was this door opening for me that didn't, I hadn't even thought about. I hate to say, you know, I hadn't fully thought about. And you've educated me. You've educated me about Windrush. I think it's Windrush, which
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm sure most Americans may not even know what that is.
Ah.
Um,
No.
do
No, I
you?
didn't.
Why don't you tell us? Tell us
Yeah.
what?
Can you educate? Can you educate me?
So basically during the I guess the 1950s predominantly, the British government invited those from the Caribbean over to help during, I guess it would have been, you know, post-war efforts where they were in need of, you know, people to help with, you know, in various industries where there was a lack of, you know, a workforce. So there was lots of people needed for the transportation, for nurses and medical profession and all sorts of sort of work industries. And so they were invited over, and you had an influx of African Caribbean men, women come over from, you know, all different islands, the Jamaica, St. Vincent, St. Kitts, Guyana, all over the place, in order to come over. And they did come over on the ships during the 1950s, and they took up the work that was needed, you know. So yeah, so we had this whole, they called it the Windrush. They had all these people come over during that time, 1950s, 1960s, and also from Africa, not just from the Caribbean, actually, I should say, also from Africa as well. Yeah. So yeah, and a lot of them ended up in some of the cities, Liverpool, London, around where the ports were of the UK, and you may still find some of those communities exist today. So yeah, and we have this great it's called the Black Cultural Archives, where they have lots of sort of documented information about, you know, Windrush and individuals during that time. They've recorded, you know, kept records of, you know, those that journeyed over to the UK during that time period. So yeah, it's quite fascinating. I remember hearing even my grandparents telling me stories about their journey over to England on the ships, and you know how cold it was when they arrived. They hadn't realized how cold it was.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking coming from like the islands to come to like the UK, just
Mm.
the change in weather in and of
Mhm.
itself. Like that
Yeah,
must have been like a really drastic change, let alone
real.
like it's a whole new country, a whole new culture, and whole like all these different policies and probably rules around labor that you don't even know you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and how they were treated as well. You know, sometimes, you know, they'd come over looking for accommodation, and you'd have a sign that says, no Irish, no dogs, no blacks. So the blacks were even beneath the dogs. Yeah, I think there's even a photograph somewhere circulating that shows that. Yeah, it's really, yeah, really interesting stories. Yeah,
Wow.
real life. Yeah.
Like a global history. You just it's wild to see to be able to compare
Yeah.
different countries and to learn about that.
Yeah, yeah. And also their you know, how they manage to you know, bring over their family, you know, once they arrive, sometimes they'll send over for their families, you know, their children, you know, all that kind of stuff. It was not easy for them. It was very difficult. A lot of challenges for them.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Wow. That sits on my heart. Um,
Yeah.
so when we think about coffee, Georgina, where are Blacks in the UK and Europe? I don't know if you can speak for all of Europe and the UK. Where from
Probably
sharing with
parts
the
of the UK.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's growing, and there are a lot of Black men and women who are taking up space within the coffee industry more so now, or they're coming out of hiding, possibly. And we have some great roasters that are here in London. We've got Perception Coffee Roasters, they're really cool. We have Little Coffee Company, it's a great brand as well. We have quite a few that are existing, and we have quite a few individuals who are becoming qualified QAs, and we have those that have started up their own coffee stores and coffee shops. I know quite a few in London now. They're growing in numbers and they're doing amazingly.
Wow.
Yeah. Whereas I think before, maybe 5-6 years ago, there weren't that many. I could probably count on one hand. But now, even say attending some of the coffee festivals here in London, I'm starting to see more and more people that look like me, which is fantastic. Yeah. So we're in roasting, coffee shops, retail outlets, brands are starting up and getting their products out there into some of really great department stores now. So yeah, it's getting there. Yeah.
Exciting.
Can we compare that to the US? What's it like in the US according to what you've seen, Phyllis? In terms of
It's like we are in turbo mode and I love it. Yeah, CCRE has this campaign this month, Strong Black Coffee, We See You, and we're highlighting many Black coffee professionals within the industry here in the US. And so, yeah, we're seeing so much activity in this space. Just being able to take advantage of technology, and some of the roadblocks have been kind of lowered, as far as, being able to roast. The pandemic told us we can buy things online as well as Amazon. So instead of going to your, to the grocery store, to the, brands, we're able to, buy coffee from folks that we align in values with. So I like that. And I think that there's something to this global coming together. I'm sorry, I'm a community organizer by heart. If you really want to know, I love putting people together to get work done that nobody believes that it can be done. And it would be really cool to have the Black coffee professionals from the UK aligning with the Black coffee professionals in the US and Europe. It takes a lot to make it as an entrepreneur, no matter what industry you're in. And sometimes you never know. When I think about what has helped me to make it, it is the relationships, the motivation that I receive from friends and support, family. It's a combination of things. So support is highly underrated. Tiffany, I wanted to ask you, I think, as I said, I think we could have a podcast, and I hope we do have a podcast where both of you are the center of the conversation, because I know that your stories are amazing and what you can contribute to this. You recently finished up an article for Roast Magazine, and I love the title. And can you remind us of what the title is?
Can I remind us of that? Yes, I can.
I can see it. I love it. I can't say it.
It's Black Mattering and Coffee.
Wow.
And it's about our trip that we all took. That's why I got to meet Georgina in person. First time. But yeah, it's about our trip that we all took, and the ways in which I was reminded of Black mattering, like the ways in which Blackness matters without like any contestation or any question whatsoever on that trip. Yeah, it was really helpful. It was a really powerful trip for me in many ways, like I learned so much as I would consider myself a newbie in the coffee industry. So I learned so much about the like I'm more of a tactile experiential learner. So being able to go on that trip, I was able to I was able to see more clearly all of the ways in which a coffee supply chain works, and understand the amount of people and relationship building that happens throughout that process. And I could also see how it could easily become rapidly inequitable, rapidly a process through which Black lives are forgotten and don't matter. But on that trip, there were some examples and experiences where it really felt like I was back at home with my mama and my grandmama and my aunties, and they were on the table sipping coffee. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
back myself, kind of like you said, Phyllis, I learned a lot about myself and my own kind of thought processes and assumptions, while being on that trip. So
yeah. Oftentimes we think we're out here doing different sorts of work to sway the masses and the public and to change ideas, but it really is us that we're working on.
that's right.
Mhm.
So,
That's right.
Isn't it amazing being that, you can spend so many years, as you said, in the coffee industry to realize that actually we don't know anything at all. Like I'm always continuously learning something new about coffee. And I
Yeah.
think, yeah, and that trip definitely gave me a new sort of appreciation for coffee and, how it actually arrives, in my cup on my table, and that I'm able to enjoy it. I think one of the things that really touched me the most was some of the stories that some of the farmers told as well, which was quite cool. Yeah, really.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's for you, Georgina, who has worked in coffee in the UK for quite a while as an educator. You've probably seen this idea of storytelling, how we like to tell the stories of farmers, and you, Tiffany, as well, where you go, okay, that's a great story. But when you go to those farms and you sit down and you meet with the people, you come to realize that there's no way you can tell their stories, or it can be translated um, in a way that is as deep and meaningful in their own lives, like fourth generation coffee farmers. Many of the Black producers, they are not in fourth generation, they're in the first generation. So they're very vulnerable. So the thing that you're talking about is a global thing for Black people that are in the diaspora trying
Mhm.
to build a life in this industry.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That trip yeah, it's like it feels like a milestone trip. There was like a pre-Brazil with and post Brazil in terms of just understanding how things could be. Like it's just like the way you all organized and orchestrated that trip. It just felt like there was like so much relationship building that was cultivated throughout the time. If we were like creating our own little universe, it felt like on that trip
yeah,
where there were a different set of rules around
yeah,
how to be in relationship and do business at the same time.
Yeah.
And it was just, yeah, I learned a lot.
yeah.
Well, thank you for doing that.
Yeah. Tiffany, was there a particular poignant moment or particular point of that trip that really sort of stood out to you, or really, if you could name one part of the trip that
Yeah.
really stood out to
The
you?
one part that sticks out to me, which is what like that article that Phyllis kind of guided me and helped me in writing, was the story was where was with the, was when we were asked to also share our stories.
Mhm.
That to me felt like a pivotal, like I felt like an embodied like shift in that
Yeah.
moment, where it was like, yeah, everybody's gonna tell their story. Everybody's gonna get up and talk. Like, come on. And I just felt like, and I didn't know, because that was my first time on an origin trip. I didn't know what that was. I just knew for me, I felt something like about sharing about myself. I felt like, like people are going to be able to evaluate me a little bit more. The more that I share with somebody, the more I tell my story with somebody, the more material I give them to evaluate me. And that stuck out to me a lot. But I think that also helped to forge more deeper relationships, especially with like across the different groups that were traveling together. For how many days was that we were traveling together?
Uh,
10
so
10 to 12
I,
days.
yeah, I
10,
don't
12
know.
days. How many 700 miles, something like that?
Yeah, no, it's a
It
bit
it was like a real life experience, so I think that was like so the like mutual storytelling really stuck out to me. But what about y'all? Anything that stuck out to y'all on the trip?
um, you know, I I I just centering Blackness in the trip and and watching how everyone responded to that was interesting to me. Watching the dynamics of having, men who are roasters and used to, kind of being in charge. How were they going to respond to a woman-led trip? Right. So there were a lot of dynamics going on. We even talked about how the driver of the van for the Black producers, someone said that they thought he was a bit disrespectful to the folks, and I didn't dig into that further. But the thing is that maybe he wasn't used to driving around over, 700 miles, a group of Black farmers. He himself was Black, right? I didn't investigate that. So there were so many little changes and shifts in in during the trip. So always watching out for that. Like when will someone want to take the reins? Because of my gender, because of my race. Because when I look at myself and I think about what some of the challenges that I've experienced in coffee is, if I had one word to explain it, I would say doubt. Um, and doubt comes in when you're one of few. Why would you think you could do this? As if jobs opportunities are based on gender, yes, we have different physicalities and whatever, but I think, just watching all the dynamics of relationships that are seared into our heads, that go beyond what we think we believe or act on.
Yes.
Agreed. I'm really excited to read your article, Tiffany, once it's published. I'm so excited to read it. Can't wait. And but just to give like some of the listeners a bit of context about the trip, what can you explain what an origin trip actually is and what this particular trip was about, and how did the farmers come to be on this trip with us? Yeah.
It was
The article. You were explaining what the article was about.
Oh no, not the article. Just for the
The
listeners.
trip.
Just
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah.
The trip in general.
Just,
I organized the trip. I guess
I don't know.
better.
um,
It's been 25 years, guys. Okay. So yeah,
all
the
is
trip
forgiven.
kind of, how I was talking about initially, how it feels like I live this life of stumbling around and doing things. I'm sure my life is very intentional. But a couple years ago, one of our good long-term buyers of the coffee from the program had asked, are we going to go to Brazil? And I thought, oh gosh, okay. And I went ahead and planned this trip, and that was in 2022 was our first trip. And so that kind of gave us a basis of what we wanted to see and how we could make it better. And I just committed myself, even in addition to the work of CCRE and running my company, BD Imports, I committed myself to ensuring that this was a trip that offered the best educational experience possible to anyone. And so it was a lot of hard work, but great support, great team in Brazil with some wonderful ideas. Josiane Coachram and Miriam Aguirre are just incredible folks. Nate Peixoto, one of the producers, we all came together and we just said, what would be the best experience? And we just kept asking questions and we kept building and building. And so when we showed up there, it's so funny because I said, we're not going to the same region as we went last year. We're going to go to a new region. And I said, I think we're going to have about 3 or 4 spaces on the bus that some of the farmers can join us. So can you ask, what producers would like to go with us on the bus? And they came back with a list of 16 people. And they said, we're getting our own bus and we're going with you. And I'm like, okay.
Love it.
So yeah, that's kind of how it turned out. Yeah, just not trying to guide it too much, but let the ideas flow. And it was a great experience for all of us. And, as we talk about, the work of the CCRE, and I know that one of the questions happened to be how has I seen or been engaged in building equity in a supply chain? It is the program, it is the trip that we've been talking about. But I can tell you when I thought about the CCRE, here's what I thought about. I thought that as coffee folks, we always want to go out and fix the world. We always want to go out there and say, okay, you guys aren't treating your women right. I mean, I've been a part of that, working on gender equity programs in East Africa. There's enough work here, y'all. There is plenty of work here for us to do. So I really wanted the focus of CCRE to be home. And that had not been the place for me where I had put forth my effort in trying to build social change. It had always been on the grounds of some other country under some other government that wasn't treating their people well, or, whatever. And CCRE is about let's fix us, because we got some stuff. I do believe that if we focus on us, then all that stuff out there will come together better. If we build a more inclusive community of coffee here in the US, alternatively, the supply chains are going to change. Because as one of few Black women working importing, I've helped to build a diverse supply chain. So it will innately change. But that's why I think we have to focus on us.
What's that saying when you, what was it? Instead of looking to the world to change, you have to change yourself first. I can't remember how the saying goes, but yeah. That makes a lot of sense, what you just said. Yeah.
Start at home.
Start at home, yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that question? I know, because one of the things that I really have always appreciated about working with the CCRE and with, and being on the trip to Brazil was the focus on history, like centering on Blackness and focusing on like the history around whatever region we're in and how like it came to be, so that we have like a context to understand like the present through the history. So I was wondering, when you're talking about like starting at home and addressing some of the challenges at home around equity and inclusion in the coffee industry, what's some of the reasoning as to like how did it get to the point that it is in this country when it comes like around coffee, and like inequity in terms of who gets to reach certain roles in the coffee industry, who gets to be promoted into, above the like barista role, and who gets to even become a barista in the coffee industry, who gets to become a roaster in this country, who gets to become an importer, an exporter, all of that.
Yeah, that's a whole podcast in itself. I
Just
don't
do
know. I
Yeah.
I have spent a lot of time thinking about it. I think the challenge is universal. When you look at the coffee supply chain, there are a lot of people who are operating on both ends of it. There's massive amounts of producers, there's massive amounts of folks in the service industry. Those two parts of the industry tend to house lower wages. And so then you have everyone throughout the supply chain that starts to be, and we hear the term and we hate the term gatekeeping. But when there are fewer opportunities, and then you add in a lot of coffee companies that have come into the US or from immigrant families, right? So they've built family legacies that are in their fourth and fifth generation now, right? So they are way ahead. They have investments in equipment that can supply large industries to build wealth, right? So they are way, way ahead, hundreds of years, it feels like, ahead in wealth building and knowledge. And so I think that for many of us, agricultural products, coffee, it's kind of a hidden thing. It's something simple. It's something, so we think, if we're consumers.
Yeah.
It's something that's just a part of our day. And if we don't see representation in coffee, then that makes it even more hidden, because it's just something that somebody is doing out there. Just let me pull it off the shelf or buy it from someone. So I think this hidden part of the supply chain, I lived in a city for 20 some years, and as I was getting ready to leave, I was getting an award by the community center. And when they called me up on stage, they introduced me as a coffee shop owner. And these were people who were my friends. And I'm like, I'm not a coffee shop owner. You've never been to my coffee shop. I'm a coffee importer. So this whole idea, 20 years ago, I have this photo of standing at this dinner party, and I was talking to this economic development guy in my city, and I was telling him about the idea of coffee, and he said, Black people don't drink. You're not going to be that successful because Black people don't drink a whole lot of coffee. So there's this idea. I think the pandemic allowed us, and the platforms allowed us, to see each other drinking coffee. We consume a lot more coffee than you would think. And so I think a lot is coming out, and there's a lot of reasons why. There's a lot of reasons why. I had this vision this morning of going to visit a third generation coffee company where there's luxury cars parked outside in front of a roaster, and then going to visit a coffee producer, and they're generationally living impoverished. And so I think, Tiffany, that things will change. I mean, the only thing that I have is my optimism and hope for a better future. And I've had a chance to visit your classroom, and I know that you are giving your students information that will change the way they go into business. When they go into the workforce, they will see things differently. And I'm wondering if you're getting that feeling or understanding that the next generations will see life differently. They are not going to be comfortable living off the backs of other people. And so would you speak to a little bit about what you're seeing in the classroom as a professor at Georgia Tech, a professor, a researcher, a writer, and a student to coffee? What are you hopeful of or seeing as you tell sort of a different story to your students?
Yeah, I feel like every time I'm in the class, this is my second semester, so teaching the class with a focus on the coffee industry. And I'm creating new materials based off of some archival work. I got a small grant to support some student workers to come and help with archival research and things like that to kind of use the specialty coffee industry and the coffee industry as a whole as like a context to understand work equity and wellness. And every time I'm in the class, we're getting ready to do like our first experiential exercise based off of this, and I'm going to send it to you all so you all can see it and give me your feedback too, the PowerPoint slides. I'm always like, I'm like, I feel like I'm learning right at the same time as the students are about like, oh, maybe I can do this other thing that's like a part of my work differently based off of what I'm seeing in the coffee industry. So for example, the entire class is focused on like how do we do sustained equity work? Like how do we do the work of creating sustained equity and at the same time sustain ourselves in the process?
That's the key.
And that's, I think, for me and for like the people I grew up around, and the people that I've been doing research projects with and studying, that's the challenge, is doing the work and sustaining ourselves at the same time. And so what we first start out with doing is learning like key words and definitions around, kind of like we did last year at the SCA. What does diversity actually mean, and what are the outcomes associated with it? Same thing with equity, same thing with inclusion, et cetera, et cetera. And we also talk about the history, like learning the history of the industry that we're in, that we're working in. And so our first exercise is kind of doing that within specialty coffee, like looking at a range of specialty coffee companies and seeing like, what are their what is their focus? Is it D? Is it E? Is it I? Is it J? Is it R? Is it B? How do they do it? How do they do it?
And all of those stand for justice, belonging, yeah,
Respect,
respect,
diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, respect, belonging, right?
yeah.
And these are so many of the terms that we hear, but oftentimes we don't really know, like some of those terms aren't really in alignment with each other. Like somebody might want equality and somebody might want equity. They're not the same thing.
Right.
Because for equity to happen, somebody ain't gonna get the same thing as somebody else, because you're restoring history through and you're like addressing historical barriers. So that might mean somebody else gets an additional resource to restore the barriers and to like reconstruct the barriers that are historical. Like, so we have to understand that equality and equity aren't the same thing. And that's how we can at first begin to do work together that's sustained equity. We have to understand like, what is our actual goal? Is it equity? Is it diversity? Is it respect? First, we need to understand that, and then we can, continue down the road, right? And so just by doing the exercise that we're like prepping the exercise for this upcoming week, it's helped me to be clear on, the ways in which I can think about that in my own and other work that I'm doing. I think the coffee industry offers so much, especially specialty coffee offers so much around that, because there's so many organizations that are trying to do this work. So we can learn different ways to do it. Like there are so many ways that organizations are trying to do it. And my students are starting to, like the first day that I told them we were going to be focusing on coffee, and I was like, where do you think coffee, like where what's like the origin, what's like, where does it, and then Colombia, Brazil. And I'm like, well, those are really high producing countries. And, and they're like, what? But because it is an industry that no matter what, you probably have heard of it. Even if you don't like drinking coffee, you know about it. So it's creating, to your question about them, like it's creating an interest because like their interest, because it feels like a more tangible context for them. Like they feel like, oh, I can think about doing DEI work in the coffee industry. I know coffee. I know these companies. I've heard of these companies. And they're able to absorb the information a little bit more and see some of the changes that may need to happen a little bit more clearly than if it were another industry. And they're really excited about it usually.
Good.
Georgina, I could interview you all day. When you think about where Black individuals are in the UK and Europe, what do you think is going to take to build greater equity and to kind of, build community so that there are prominent business with staying power, generational staying power?
Yeah. Oof. I think it has to be tackled from not just one particular place. I think it has to come from all various directions, because there's so much that is needed, and the Black coffee community in the UK, it's very small, and we are quite, I guess, spaced out when you think about it. We're not like concentrated in any one, although like London, of course, there are more, more so that are known than those that are outside. But I think we need to connect more, network more with each other, reach out to each other more. We have started a group, myself and two others. We did start very first people of color, Black and brown people in coffee cupping social event last year, which was really, really good. It was very successful. The feedback that we got from the individuals that participated was so positive. As a result of that, we have now come together as individuals in various sections of the coffee industry. Some of us are roasters, some of us are brand owners, some of us are teachers, educators, some of us are doing other roles within the coffee industry. And it's been great to have that sounding board to, bounce off ideas, thoughts, challenges, solutions, if we can. And I think more of these sort of gatherings would be great. Possibly more access to resources would also be great. Also, I think more outreach work to some of the education sort of institutes that are out there when it comes to the career paths into coffee. I think that's something that would also help the industry, because I find that there are lots of students out there, or as the information that they have as far as careers go is what they see when they come across, some of the high street coffee companies, and they see the barista behind the counter, but they're not aware of all the other roles that are involved, so I think that could also be very, very helpful as well, because I have found when speaking to some of my trainees, once they become aware of all these amazing roles that they can do, they're like, oh wow, I can actually see myself doing that. And I think they just need that. They just need to have access to that information and have some guidance as to which way to go, because as you know, in coffee you can start off at any particular level and you can make your way through. You don't have to have a specific pathway through to a particular coffee career. So yeah, there's so many things. I could go on.
I believe that for folks that have not been in coffee for generations, that when they come to an industry, they can see the gaps and then they can be creative. And I strongly believe that there are opportunities and career paths and functions that currently don't exist. By inviting more people in creatively, especially people who are highly creative, they're going to offer new solutions. So I'm not totally fixated on exactly what we're doing now because that isn't working quite so well for everybody. I'm interested in the new ideas for new pathways, new opportunities. You know, what are we missing?
Mm.
Mm-hmm. What are we missing? How do we?
One thing I believe we have to be mindful of, you know, we talked about the use of technology has opened the door for more opportunities and a more diverse industry. But at the same time, I think it's so important for CCRE to exist in order to ensure that we are writing our own contributions.
That's
Because
right.
there are no contributions from the past. You know, this is Black History Month. And other than Rose Nicod, who bought her way out of history, Kaldi from Ethiopia, I'm at a loss to give you anyone who is Black, who contributed to coffee in a meaningful way. So we are always talking about the folks of now, which is great. You know, I love being called out during Black History Month by my coffee friends, and I love being recognized. But I think it's sad that we as an industry can't really identify the contributions of Black people in this industry beyond production, beyond, you know, someone fighting for their freedom out of enslavement. And we have to make sure that we write those stories, we tell those stories, we're part of the narrative, and that, you know, I hope that CCRE will stand for that, that we are highlighting the contributions. It's important because going forward, the staying power, the entrepreneurs who will step forward will do that if they see people that look like them.
Yeah. That's I feel like that like resonates so well, so much with me, and it goes back to what Georgina was saying about like just by showing people, look what's possible. Look at all the different roles that people play. I had no idea. I found out last year because you all told me. I was like, what? I'm like reevaluating my whole life. Like, I could be doing. I mean, it's hard, so it's not like I just think I could get up and do it. But I also felt like, wow, like imagine knowing that this was a possibility at, 18 or 15. You know what I'm saying? It could change so much. It could change so much of the way that, kind of like what you were saying, Phyllis, the way that the industry looks.
Yeah, that's why one of the things that we do at Little Coffee Company is to really tell the stories of our individual farmers. Like we know our farmers by name. We have that type of relationship with our farmers, and we felt it really important to actually say, no, this lady right here, she's the one who put these, got these beans together that you are enjoying right now. And we tell the story of that particular individual. It doesn't, one of the things that we try not to do is make it one of those sort of, sad story type of thing. We want to be able to show all sides of the farmer, not just to use it as a promotional tool to sell more coffee. You know what I mean? I think that's really important as well.
And I think Blackness helps with that. You talked about the struggle of your people in the UK. We know the struggle of African Americans. And so when we travel to places and we see other disenfranchised people, we know the joy that they have in spite of.
Yeah.
We also know that we can't go there and be their savior until we showed up. So the narratives are gonna be different. So you talking about how you handle your marketing at the Little Coffee Company has everything to do with who you are.
That's right.
And the owner, right? Who is, from the island. So That's the value in bringing more people to the table. Respect.
Yeah,
Yeah. Dignity, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can't take anybody's dignity. We should not feel that we own that power.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, I love that.
Me too. I have a question.
Sure.
It's actually Georgina's question, so I don't know. I'm looking at it and I'm like, can I ask this question?
Uh-oh.
Georgina, is that okay? Do you mind?
Yeah, go for it.
It's a question about business and impacts, profit and impacts.
Yeah.
And how to balance it. How have you two, like, I'm curious about how you worked with that, Phyllis, because I think that's a question that I get from students a lot. It's like, yeah, I think it's a worthy cause, but what if it ain't gonna make me no money?
That's a great question. And I'll say briefly, what I found in those situations is that it always gives you a chance to come back to, is this what you really believe in? And this is contra to business, but I'm gonna say it anyway because it's the way I run my business. It's based on faith. And when you're running a business that has a social impact, there is constantly, it's almost constantly like the universe is saying, but are you serious? Because you have these situations that come up where you are just like, well, okay, if I do this, then I'm not gonna have enough, or this isn't beneficial to me. And I can tell you, I've survived, in some cases, deciding that this is what I'm going to do regardless. Because if you make the decision, if you think that it's right, if you believe that it's fair and it's right to do what's right, you will do it when it's hard. And so for me, there's a constant, yeah, but okay, what are you going to decide here? What are you going to decide here? And I've had to go back, because it's so easy to do. Someone said to me the other day, we need 5 cents a pound less for our coffee. I went straight to the producer. I'm laying in bed and I send a text and I said, why did I do that? No, you get none of that. We're going to distribute that this way. Because it's a natural thing to push down those who you think you can push down, and we all do it. But it's learning to come back, and it's learning to have faith that what you believe, what you're standing on, works. And if you believe that, if you're switching back and forth, then you don't believe it works.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's got to do with mindset as well. I feel like we can make profit and have impact at the same time. I don't feel that because you want to have a social impact company or business that means that you can't then live for yourself. We still have bills that we need to pay, and we also, maybe if we have a workforce, we also have to think about our workforce as well. So I believe that it's coming out of that scarcity mindset and knowing that we are living in an abundant world and that everything we need is actually around us. It's just about, I think, using the resources that are God-given to us in the proper way, not be wasteful, not be greedy, not be, I think it's just like, we have to have like this whole shift. Although it may be idealistic at this time, I do believe that we can be profitable and make impact at the same time. I feel like some of the businesses that I've seen, I feel like we're moving more into a more feminine way of doing business. It's not that kind of hard masculine type of way of doing business. I feel like we're being more intuitive when we do business these days, or that's what I'm starting to see. And I feel like that's come with that shift in mindset, in that we can build a great business, we can work with people we like, we can you know, we can make the decisions to lead our business in a more sort of have more morals, and just do things in a correct and right way. And I think, yeah, profit and impact can go hand in hand. Yeah.
It's not easy though.
It's
So,
not easy.
yeah.
No, it's not easy. Not easy at all. I'm not saying it's easy at all,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I believe it's possible. And you know, there are businesses out there that have demonstrated it quite well. So yeah, it's possible.
Agree. Yeah, I think that is the biggest question, especially for young professionals coming out, is you don't need to, you know, you need to feed yourself first. And I think you can do both of it.
I do too. I don't know I don't have all the answers for how to do it, but I do too. Okay, go ahead, Georgina. Were you gonna say something?
No, I was just gonna say, and also with like technology and, you know, social platforms and stuff, you know, there's some companies that are making some incredible like growth and really using those new apps and tools really well in order to send their message out, to get the message out there, and maintain integrity in their business. So yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. Really good question.
I love this reframing around faith and mindset, and you know, embracing more of the versus thinking of like a binary. It has to be this or this. We think of more like indigenous traditions where it's both and, not either or. It's not either impact or profit. It's both of them can coexist. But like you said, that really like struck me as like just, but also being a good steward of the resources that we do have. So that way we're not being, you know, like you said, greedy, wasteful, et cetera, that really struck home to me, because I think it feels like trying to do both, like you said, Phyllis, can be hard because we're just going against the grain of like this like bigger wave that is saying it's got to be either or. Like very colonial mindset of like it has to be either or, that is built into the structures that we have to work through to kind of do the business sometimes. And so saying like, I'm going to work with you, but I'm doing it a different way, it could meet some resistance. And that's where it feels like that might be where the faith really has to come in, is because you're going to meet resistance every time you try, until people are going this way.
And seeing the bigger picture, the bigger long-term picture in investing, making that investment.
Isn't that the way though, when you introduce something new that, like you said, goes against what's, I guess, traditionally happened, that it's just that case of educating those, and eventually they can then see the vision. It may take them some time, but I guess that's what happens when you're a visionary person. That's what happens. You can see it, but it's almost like you have to wait for those others to kind of catch up with you in order for them to get it. But yeah.
And sometimes when you have a vision, you don't even know that you're not communicating your vision, because it's embedded inside of you.
Yeah.
Still trying to pull it all out, but you know that there are certain things that you strongly believe in. Invest in other people, understanding that it takes time, that you don't benefit, you know, the funds that I get today, if they were invested in an opportunity that helped to advance someone, that moved their generations forward, is that more valuable than me taking X amount of dollars just because it looks good? Yeah. It's a very interesting way of thinking, and I think For me, it has to be faith. And also for me, it's what feels good, what makes my heart sing, what work, and the work of the CCRE gives me energy. Um, it's very challenging. It is very challenging. But it gives me energy. Yeah.
Love it. Yeah, could go on. Could go on. But that's what I really like about coffee when I've looked into the history of coffee and the fact that it was used for, connecting back with nature, connecting back with family and friends. That's, I kind of hold on to that thought when I'm, amongst others and sharing in coffee and education and things like that. And wondering what you both, if you thought about it, see for the future of coffee for Black people in coffee.
Wow, that's a good question.
Or shall we leave it for another podcast? Another episode.
I think so. I think the future is good. I do. Because first of all, it's awareness and opportunity. And there are a lot of companies who may have started or no longer here. There are a lot of companies that are finding their way. But I think it looks good. I think there's a lot to examine there, but I think it looks good.
Yeah.
What about you, Georgina?
What do I hope for coffee, for Black folks in coffee? I would like to see more of us in the industry. I'd like to see more of the younger generation getting into coffee and all the amazing parts of it. I would like to see, I think since experiencing the Origins trips to Brazil, I'd love to see a lot more of the younger folk maybe going on some of these Origin trips themselves and experiencing, the full range of coffee from farm to, to retail shelves. That's something I'd love to see for the future of Black folk in coffee. Yeah.
That sounds lovely. I
Yeah.
think it'd be really cool to see that happen. To have like a like a swap.
Yeah.
Like an exchange of cultural.
Aurelia and I and you, I think we were all talking about that when we were on the trip.
Yeah, that would be awesome. That would be awesome. Any other questions?
Oh, wow.
About the future plans, what is for CCRE and how can people get in touch with CCRE?
Yeah. In 5 years, I hope that the CCRE is a force to be reckoned with in the industry. And by that, I mean stable, strong organization where we have, programs that individuals can partake in to advance. I want it to be, I think the vision is to have it be what it needs to be, to always be that that voice, to be stable, for it not to be a program is what I'm saying. We oftentimes think of these things that kind of come and go. And if we look at it that way, there's nothing, I don't have the wherewithal as one physical human being to create a business in one generation that can withstand what I see in some other long-standing businesses, or to be that one person or one entity that says, Blackness is important in coffee. So I think to institutionalize it is so critical. Business can't do that because they have to function. They have to function as a business. And I feel as though an institution will hold our commitment much longer, more consistently. And I see us doing that. I see us moving to a space of really being that solid organization that is there. Got a lot of plans and a lot of ideas for the future. And so I'm excited to implement even the small plans that we have. So it's going to be a fun ride. This is CCRE is probably going to be my legacy in coffee. As much as I've spent years working with women in coffee, I think that CCRE is going to be my legacy. As much as I was out there, I can't believe home now is the battleground, and it is not easy, but I think we will get there.
For sure, definitely. And if anybody, any individuals, organizations are interested in getting involved with the work of the CCRE, how should they go about it?
Go to our website, Coffee for Equity, or our Instagram account, Coffee for Equity, and follow us on Instagram, and go to send us an email via our website, or DM us. Just reach out, and we got some good folks engaged in this work. You too are part of it and part of the future. And so I'm excited for it. And I think that we're going to build something really great. I know that we're going to build something great and longstanding. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And Tiffany, if anybody wants to hear more about some of the research that you're doing, how should they get in contact with you?
I was like, I don't know, but I do. You can go to my website, www.tiffanydawnjohnson.com.
Awesome. Thank you.
We're going to start believing in ourselves.
Yeah. If anybody wants to get hold of me, they can do via the CCRE Instagram as well, and also Georgina at coffeeforequity.org.